All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get things started here. Thank you for joining us today. Today's webinar is part of the CED Green Tech training series, and we are very excited to be hosting today with our partner Generac. Generac is a long-established leader in backup power and has expanded to provide a leading product offering of solar, energy storage, and whole home energy solutions. We're excited to run through those today. Jeff, if you could go to the next slide, please. So before kicking things off, some very quick housekeeping. We will have a question and answer portion towards the end of today's event. And to participate, please submit your questions through the GoToWebinar questions section on the right of your screen there. And be aware that a recording of today's event will be sent to all registrants. Next slide, please, Jeff.
That's mostly a warning to Jeremy and myself, folks.
This will be preserved for posterity, Jeff and Jeremy. Thank you. All right, to quickly introduce CED Green Tech, we are the nation's leading solar equipment distributor with over 80 locations nationwide. We carry the leading solar, electrical, energy storage, and EV charging brands to support your installation business. Please visit our website at cedgreentech.com to view a map of all of our locations and to get in touch with a location near you. With our numerous stocking locations nationwide, our fleet of trucks rolling daily, our commitment to service, integrity, and reliability, and an unmatched service offering, there is no better partner in solar than CED Green Tech. And with that, I'm very pleased to turn the mic over today to our esteemed hosts, Jeremy and Jeff.
Awesome. Hello, everyone, and thank you, Tom. My name is Jeff McAndrew. I'm Director of Sales for the East. Many of you on this call I may already know. I think over my the past 5 years here with this technology, I've had the pleasure of traveling all over the country and meeting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of solar contractors talking about this technology. I'm joined here today with Jeremy Niles. Jeremy?
Thanks, Jeff. Hey, everyone. My name is Jeremy Niles. I'm one of several product managers here at Generac. Been in the business for about 10 years. Got my start with Pike Energy, and when we were acquired, along with Jeff, we came on board to Generac. And I've had a really great time improving the power cell system, bringing new features to our installers and adding new products to our offerings, including Power Micro, Power Generator, Power Manager, and a couple others that we're going to be sharing with you today.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeremy. Today, we're going to cover Generac as an organization. We'll talk about the technology, of course, applications for our technology on PowerCell, the PowerCell components, how we differentiate, and then we're going to talk a bit about upcoming product launches that we're really, really excited about. And as Tom had mentioned, there will absolutely be time for a Q&A session as well. Most of, if not all of you, know who Generac is. We've been around for over 60 years. We're a US-based company. We're headquartered in Waukesha, Wisconsin, and we're transitioning to become an energy technology company, and I think you'll get that vibe from us today. Generac as an org, 2021, we're a little over $3.5 billion in net sales, so we're a pretty large organization. Pretty incredible thing is that companies that are, billion-dollar companies don't grow, 40, 50% a year. What we have for the past few years, we've been growing as an organization. Multiple business segments have been growing quite rapidly. We're most well known for our residential home standby generators. We've got 70 to 80% market share in resi home standby generators. What that means is we've got somewhere between 2 and 3 million backup power customers throughout North America. We love throwing out the comparison that if you combine all resi PV installs in North America, you're looking at somewhere around 2 million homes with solar. We as one organization have over 2 million backup power customers. That's how we've made a name for ourselves. That's really our core competency, has been generating power when homeowners and businesses on the industrial side of our business, hospitals, literally power plants need that power. Most Generac has products that will provide you resiliency. So contractors like the fact that they can partner with a household brand. They like the fact they're partnering with, as I just showed you, a bankable company. Has been around for a long time, is going to be around a long time, is able to ride through the solar coaster because we're a diversified business. Something else that contractors like about working with Generac is the fact that we spend tens of millions of dollars on marketing every single year. This year, we're going to generate for clean energy alone over 36,000 in-home consultations. That's over, I think, 50% growth over where we finished last year, which is quite remarkable. And so essentially, we're doing national advertising on, you could be watching, I think I've seen our infomercials on ESPN during football playoffs. I've seen them on JetBlue flights to Puerto Rico. We're advertising everywhere, and we're driving a lot of end user demand for not just energy storage, but also solar in general. We're trying to create more awareness for the category. We're taking that demand, pre-qualifying those leads the best that we can, and then setting up appointments for our certified contractors who are on our PowerPlay platform. And so following the presentation, what we'll end up doing is having your local market development manager reach out to you and walk you through the path for certification and signing up on PowerPlay Clean Energy. PowerPlay Clean Energy is our lead disposition tool. It's $200 a year. If you close one sale from leads that Generac sends you, you have made your money back many fold. And we have a lot of contractors who would vouch for the fact that they have closed sales from these leads. Before we get into the technology itself, we're going to talk a little bit about the applications, and specifically for this, we're going to talk about PowerCell. We are going to hit on Power Micros, Power Generator, and other upcoming products. But for right now, I just want to focus on PowerCell applications. We absolutely have homeowners who are buying PowerCell inverters and our solar optimization with our inverters for savings alone, and oftentimes for homeowners who know that they're going to want a battery in the future. They're future-proofing by putting in a Generac inverter so that when they do add a battery to combat potential rate changes or to or more frequent grid outages, when they add a battery, they're going to have the best platform available. So, of course, savings is a value proposition of our platform. Once you add a battery, the universal value proposition for energy storage truly is backup power. There are a few markets like Hawaii where Hawaii, Tennessee, a few markets where you can't export or where the export rate is less than net metering. But in general, homeowners who are spending the money on a battery are buying that battery for backup power. And then applications like time of use, demand reduction, virtual power plants, they don't necessarily cover the cost of the battery, but they sure do help you reduce the cost of the backup power battery that you want. So I mentioned time of use. Our system, a lot of the advantages that we bring are for backup power, and we will talk about those. But of course, out of the box, we have the ability to do time of use. In fact, I would argue that we do time of use better than a lot of our AC coupled competitors because we charge and discharge our batteries more efficiently. And if you're in a time of use, if you're in a utility zone that's enforcing time of use, you're going to use your battery in some cases 150 times a year.
Yeah, just a note on that. I mean, you think about any investment you make where a couple percent makes a really big difference over the long term.
Yeah.
The couple percent savings that you get with the DC coupled system when you're relying on that for a payback adds up over that long term to a pretty sufficient sum. So yeah, DC coupled, super efficient.
Absolutely. So time of use is something that we do out of the box. We have some 20 to 30 pre-programmed time of use modes, and our contractors can just select from them. It takes a matter of seconds to select a time of use zone when commissioning. So that's out of the box, something we're able to do. For those of you who are not familiar with time of use, essentially we're arbitraging utility rate changes throughout the day. So in a place like, I took this image from San Diego Gas and Electric, where utility rates are going to be in some cases twice as much in the evening from, in this example, 4 to 9 p.m. as they could be throughout the middle of the day. So we charge our battery in the middle of the day, and then we discharge our battery to power our house in the evening to avoid buying that expensive electricity. There are markets where it makes a lot of sense for homeowners to literally use the solar and storage platform, the whole PowerCell platform, as the primary source of energy for their homes. We see this with every single installation in Hawaii where homeowners are not able to export back to the utility. And so they're powering their house from the solar during the day. They're simultaneously recharging their battery. And then throughout the evening, when the sun goes down, they're powering their they're powering their house from the battery through the night. What I like the analogy for this that I like is saying you're basically putting the utility in backup at this point. Power your house from solar energy storage, and then pull from the utility if and only if you need it. These are actually 3 screenshots from my own home. You can see a pretty typical solar production day on the left, the first screen here on the left. In the middle, you can see that my battery's charging from all that solar production. And then in the evening, I start to discharge my battery On the third screenshot here, you see that my battery continues discharging through the night, and then the sun starts shining, and you can see that green line start to take off. And that's my battery recharging the next day to follow the same cycle. And so I do use my system in self-supply on a daily basis just to minimize my interaction with the utility. There are a few markets where residential demand charges are applicable, like I believe in APS. And so built into the inverter out of the box, we have a set point called max import power, max import P. And so what you can do is basically set the inverter to discharge the battery if and only if there's an outage, or if the house starts to consume a certain amount of continuous electricity. So once the house hits 4,000 watts, we'll start to discharge the battery to essentially cover any power consumption above that 4,000 watts. And again, this is a pretty cool functionality that we have right out of the box, leveraging the current transformers that we ship with our equipment. And then lastly, virtual power plant. We're excited to see this become really the more preferred approach for combating the duck curve. Obviously, utilities have different ways they can combat growing solar penetration during the day and then spiking demand in the evening. And of course, some of them are leveraging time of use rates, which incentivize use of electricity during the day and less in the evening, limiting exporting of solar during the day, demand reduction. They're all trying to accomplish really helping the utility deal with this demand spike at the end of the day. I love the approach of a virtual power plant because what this is doing is incentivizing homeowners to invest in energy storage so they can have a backup power battery for when the grid does go down. And then the utility will tap into that battery and discharge it as needed. In the example here, we're talking about a connected solutions program in New Hampshire, Mass, Connecticut, and Rhode Island, where the utility will pay homeowners to discharge the battery up to 65 times a year, and never in the event of inclement weather. What you actually see here in this chart on the bottom right is a chart that is a guaranteed incentive program that Generac is offering directly to homeowners who utilize our equipment and sign up for the Connected Solutions program through us. And so what I'm showing here is that, for example, in Rhode Island, if you buy an 18 kilowatt hour battery, you'll see power cell battery size M6, 18 kilowatt hours. In National Grid in Rhode Island, we will literally write that homeowner an $1,800 check once a year for 5 years as a guaranteed incentive as part of this program. Generac as a company is evolving to offer more and more grid services programs. We want to be part of that evolution of the Grid 2.0. And this is one example of how we're proactively trying to make the sales process easier for our contractors and dealers so they can go to a homeowner and instead of saying, hey, you might get a $500 check from Eversource, you might get a $1,500 check, we can say, we're partnered with Generac, they're gonna write you a $700 check once a year for 5 years to guarantee that you're getting compensated for the utility discharging your battery. They're going to take on the risk if there's any sort of underperformance or if those events are 3 hours instead of 2 hours. So there's a lot of variability there. But I want you to be aware, you know, most homeowners, like I said, are buying batteries for backup power, but our equipment out of the box has the ability to operate in all of these different ways. Now we're going to talk about the PowerCell ecosystem. We're really going to focus on the PowerCell piece, but I want you to take a look here just at how integrated Generac is getting into the home, where it's not just the inverter energy storage, our optimization on the roof and microinverters, which we're going to discuss. We're launching DC generators. We acquired a company called Apricity, which gives us access to a hot water heater switch, which we can also enroll in virtual power plant programs. We acquired Ecobee in Q4 of last year to help become part of helping homeowners manage the largest load in the home, which is generally and historically the HVAC system. Those devices, again, will also be allowed to be enrolled in virtual power plant programs. So again, you can see the trend here. We're going to become more and more involved in our ecosystem, and we're going to train our contractors and our dealers on how to leverage the Generac product suite here to grow also their customer lifetime value. You're not just selling solar anymore. You're not just selling solar and energy storage. You could be selling solar energy storage, a DC or an AC generator, include a thermostat. You're going to see a promotion where all leads that Generac generates that sign on with our power partners are getting a free Ecobee thermostat. We'll be launching that in a couple weeks. So just be aware, we're going to continue to integrate into that home ecosystem. But at the heart of the PowerCell ecosystem is the PowerCell inverter. This is a hybrid multi-mode inverter. Today, and inherently we're DC coupled, which we'll talk about, but we are launching the ability to AC couple on August 9th. So we'll discuss that here. This is the exact same inverter, whether you're going to be DC or AC coupled. Okay. When we say DC coupled, we mean we're connecting and we're optimizing solar on the roof through our PV Link optimizers. We're bringing that power into the inverter, and we're going to keep that power as DC into and out of the battery and only invert DC to AC one time when we send it to the house.
This is as close to charging the battery with pure sunshine as you can possibly get. So no or very little loss between the array and the battery, so that as you use power throughout the day, you're not doing these unnecessary conversion steps. It's a pretty elegant system.
Absolutely. We're connecting the optimizers and the battery on a DC bus, a bus just being a series of conductors that transmits power and data. And so the battery is just charging DC from that PV, and then we're inverting it from DC to AC one time when we send it to the house. We could talk about that a little bit more later. The inverter out of the box is capable of offering partial home backup power. We have essentially a series of relays that act as a transfer switch in the inverter that allow us to run a sub panel off of the inverter. So whereas with almost all of or most of our noteworthy competition, you're installing a separate transfer switch, whether or not you're doing whole home backup. And with us, if you do want to offer an essentials backup package like bedroom, bathroom, living room, you can just put a sub panel right off the inverter and save yourself the $1,000 to $1,500 cost on an external ATS from our competitors. That being said, most of our contractors are transitioning to managed whole home backup power where they are leveraging our external ATS.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So few customers, want to or even able to think about exactly what they want to have powered in the event of a blackout, right? If anyone here on the line has done battery installations with partial home backup or a sub panel, you probably had the experience of a callback, where someone said, "Oh, I didn't consider that I might want the garage door opener, for instance,
right,
on the protected loads panel." So when you're able to offer a managed home backup system, especially the sort that we're offering, we're going to talk about Power Manager later on here. It makes it so easy for you to design these systems because it takes all that sort of pre-thinking and negotiating with your customer out of the equation. You can just say everything will have access to power, just not at the same time.
Yeah, and the installers are really going to appreciate the fact that they don't have to run into that awkward situation where the homeowner's standing behind them, breathing down their neck, saying, "I want this breaker, that breaker, that breaker," and the poor installer doesn't want to be the one to tell them,
"You forgot that."
Yeah, exactly. You forgot my car charger and my well pump and my water heater. So, anyways, we'll get into that, but just be aware that the platform can be used for partial home backup or managed whole home backup, and we're seeing a lot of people transition to the latter. And then, as I just mentioned through the application section, of course, the system is able to do time of use, demand reduction, virtual power plants right out of the box. If you're aware of a VPP, a virtual power plant program, or have a utility that you work closely with that is interested in offering a VPP, please let us know. Through the acquisition of Enbala, we actually have a whole ecosystem that utilities can use to, and contractors can use to partner with utilities to help them really work through some of the instability that the grid is seeing and is going to continue to see.
Yeah, and I don't really like selling future functionality that much, but we do stamp everything as smart grid ready, and with Enbala,
Totally.
In our wheelhouse now, you've got the guarantee that it's a 25-year investment, right? In the next 25 years, you can pretty well guarantee that your utility is going to be offering VPP programs and that your customers are going to take advantage. So selling this, they know for a fact they're going to be, have a foot in the door.
Yeah.
Take advantage of whatever their utility offers in the future.
Yeah, we're not just seeing VPPs in Massachusetts, folks, or in California. We're starting to see them in places like Arizona. We're seeing VPP opportunities in places like Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, you can pretty much expect that they're going to be expanding around the country to other locations as well. And we're gonna try to be at the forefront of that. When you do DC couple our platform, you're going to leverage our PV Link optimizers. With today's modules, it's funny, like 3 years ago, you'd be putting like 8 or 9 295 watt panels on one of these optimizers, and it was like the bee's knees to have 300 watt panels. Nowadays, you're putting usually like 6 to 7 solar panels per PV Link optimizer. You can have as few as 2 or as many as 6 or 7, depending on the module that you're using. 400 watt mod, we've seen a lot of them, like 7 modules connecting to a single PV Link. And then you can, it'll thermally regulate to 2.5 kW if it gets too hot, but I've seen these PV Links produce closer to 3,000 watts in some instances. And you could parallel up to 3 of them off the roof in a single home run. So, I mean, you're putting like 7.5 to 8 kW on a single home run off the roof with 3 10-gauge cables or 8-gauge cables, depending on your layout. And if you have more PV, you have a 4th or a 5th PV length, you're just running 2 home runs back to the inverter. The PV lengths themselves have been extremely, extremely reliable. We've done well with these devices. I think contractors like the fact that they have only a few of these on the roof. The SnapRS 802, which is a new generation product from the RS 801. This device replaces the RS 801. This is our next gen rapid shutdown. We spent a lot of time redesigning this component to make sure that we will not see failures with this device. We're putting this device through tests that far exceed the requirements for UL 1741. We're literally running these things at full power for hundreds of hours in buckets of salt water to make sure that they'll be able to withstand any operating environment, no water ingress, no corrosion issues. And it took us a while to launch this device because we knew that we absolutely had to get this device correct this time. And so for those of you who haven't installed it, all you're going to do is click the SnapRS onto the negative whip of the PV module before you load it onto the roof. And it literally just becomes an extension of the PV module's negative whip. And then the installers don't have to think about it.
If you're familiar with using MLPEs or module level power electronics from say SolarEdge or from Enphase, a lot of times with railless racking systems, you're preparing each module on the ground, with an MLPE mount. This is like that, only simpler, because instead of having to bolt that mount to the frame, attach the MLPE, connect all the whips, this is simply connecting to the negative side of the whip on the module. That's it. It's just an MC4 connection, click, and you're done. Take it up to the roof. Maybe do a little wire management on the ground, but that's it.
Yeah, we have a 25-year parts and labor warranty on the snappers and the PV links. So if you ever, even if you ran into an issue with 801s in the past, where we have an extremely generous reimbursement program around those devices. But again, we have the utmost confidence in these devices. We put them through incredible paces before bringing them to market. All right, the PowerCell Smart Battery. This is a modular battery, which is something contractors love. You can fit between 9 and 18 kilowatt hours of capacity in a single cabinet. And if you do fill it the whole way, which most of our contractors are for 18 kilowatt hours, you're getting 9 kW max continuous output and a 50 amp surge. The important thing to pick up from that is most of our contractors who are offering managed whole home backup are doing it with a single battery cabinet instead of pretty much two of literally any of our competitors' batteries. So they're saving wall space, and frankly, in a lot of cases, they're saving money. So single battery cabinet, single inverter, single transfer switch, and the power manager, they're filling the battery cabinet for 18 kilowatt hours, and they're offering managed whole home backup power.
Yeah, one thing I like to kind of draw as an analogy here is you think of like in the old days how you used to get more power, or at least more longevity out of your cell phone, right? You'd have to like buy a little set like battery pack, slap it on the back, and double your capacity if you want to double your capacity and your runtime. Nowadays your cell phone spends little processing power to optimize the way the power is distributed, right? To give power to the apps that are using the most, and reduce the amount of power given to apps that you're not using. That's the approach we're taking here. We're optimizing the way power is used in the home, not having you have to buy 2 batteries, just buy 1 battery and manage the way the power is used. And it's a lot smarter and a lot more cost effective in the end.
Yeah, and you're going to see how we do that with the power manager. Again, the battery is DC coupled inherently to the inverter. So we're optimizing DC on the roof through the solar panels. You all know this, all solar panels produce DC electricity. We're optimizing that, taking it, it goes into a DC distribution panel in our inverter, it flows right into our battery. We charge our batteries DC, comes out of the batteries DC, and then through the inverter is AC. I emphasize that because, and keep in mind that we are launching an AC coupled option here, but with a lot of our competitors, you're taking in some cases a 400 watt panel on the roof, you're putting on a micro inverter that can output almost 300 watts or 360 at best. And so you have in some cases loss there, and then you're taking that inverted power, there's another 2.5% loss. And then you're sending it into a battery that's going to lose 10% from charge and discharge. And so there's a lot of loss there starting at the panel level. working your way down to into and out of the battery. It's just literally a more efficient way of charging and discharging a battery frequently when you are DC coupled.
Do we have that app comparison slide on here about backup performance?
I don't believe it's. I don't believe that one's
anyways,
in here.
A note on backup performance, because you might have a customer that doesn't care whatsoever about efficiency. They just want to have a battery in their system. But it's worth noting that in a DC coupled system, you actually get better performance in a backup scenario. Where with an AC coupled system, you have two systems. They didn't grow up together. They don't speak the same language.
Yeah.
With our system, these two came from the exact same place. The same engineers made them. They can speak together and operate in a much more elegant fashion. If the battery's topped off or nearing topped off, it can just throttle down the amount of power being produced by the array. You take an AC coupled system that has built out of third-party components. When that battery gets topped off or it can't accept any more charge, it's going to shut the array down for a minimum of 5 minutes, which means that you're running your house oftentimes during full sun off of battery power, which puts you in a somewhat worse position when night falls. So anyway, it's important to get the most backup performance to have those components speaking together, and a DC coupled system from PowerCell is definitely the best way to go.
We'll allow for that. We actually have a good image on that coming up. With the battery modules, I just want you to be aware, again, it's a flexible system. You can put 3 battery modules for partial home or 6 battery modules for what we would consider a managed whole home application. As you add battery modules, you're not just adding more usable capacity, so how long you'll back up the house, but you're also adding more power because the battery modules are stacked in series. And so 3 battery modules is going to be, is essentially going to be your partial home option. You're backing up, I would call this, if I were selling these packages to homeowners, I would call that the essentials package for, $70 a month. We can offer the essentials package where we'll back up your lights, living room, bathroom, and bedroom, or for, $120 a month or whatever it may be through your financing, we can offer managed whole home backup power. And that is going to be 9 kilowatts max continuous AC output and a 50 amp peak. And what we found is that with that single 18 kilowatt hour battery, we're able to start things like a 3-ton with a sure start on them, which we sell through our partners at GreenTech, and additionally, run well pump water heater, and we'll show you how we do that. Again, if you're going to do managed whole home backup power, you are going to leverage our external ATS. We manufacture like 1 million transfer switches a year because we're shipping hundreds and hundreds of thousands of resi home standby generators and diesel generators and et cetera. Transfer switches are a core competency of Generac. Even competitors of ours, in some cases, are recommending Generac transfer switches. But this is the device that you'll use in the event that you're doing whole home backup power. What this is going to do is going to route power from the backup or protected loads output of the inverter right to the main service panel, and then we'll start powering those loads. The transfer time's like less than a second. It's really quick.
Yeah.
In my opinion, this device, the Power Manager, is probably the most exciting piece of new technology or new update that we've launched since we've launched, because it's the combination now of having a battery that's more powerful, 9 kW continuous backup power, with a device that is going to automatically manage the largest loads in your home when the grid goes down. So the Power Manager has built in 12 relays, and so in theory you could put 12 120 volt loads or 12 single pole breakers on it. In reality, you're going to get all of the 240 volt loads in the house, or all the 2 pole breakers, up to 6 of them, into this device, and then you're either going to delegate them as a device that we're automatically going to manage when the grid goes down, or that we're going to lock out when the grid goes down. So I might lock out my dryer, my hot tub, the pool pump, and I might want to manage my heat pumps, my well pump, my water heater, et cetera. And in that situation, when the grid goes down, if the house starts to consume more power than the PowerCell system can provide, we're simply going to temporarily shut off those loads while we keep the rest of the house running, which is absolutely key. And then we're going to bring those loads back on one at a time.
Yeah.
This is integrated directly into the PowerView mobile application. So homeowners will get a notification that their system is islanding, which we offer today. And then they can open up their app, and not only will they see how much power the entire house is consuming, but they're going to see how much power each one of these individual loads is consuming. Like, oh shoot, I set it up to manage my hot tub and it's pulling 5 kW. I might want to turn that off. And you can turn those loads on and off directly from the mobile application.
This is a really interesting product because you look at this and it's like, say, an extra $1,000 maybe as a line item on your project, right?
Maybe. No, yeah.
What you're saving though, in terms of say like electrician labor and parts for going with the sub-panel route, plus the added convenience that you get, when you don't have to have a callback because you didn't put the exact right set of loads on the sub-panel.
Sure.
This is definitely going to actually save you money and add a ton of satisfaction for your customer's experience. It's convenience for the installer, it's cost savings, and it's a massive boost in user experience for the end user. An absolute no-brainer in my opinion.
Yeah, we have contractors who, once they did their first one of these power managers, they've said, we are not going to install another project without a power manager. It takes a lot of the onus off of the contractor and frankly puts it on the homeowner to see how much power they're consuming in the house and how much power each one of these loads is consuming, and then they can manage it from there. And they can manage these loads whether they're in the house or not. You're not always home when the grid goes down. The thing that I want to emphasize too, and Jeremy, you mentioned in comparison to a protected loads panel, I think about it also in comparison to like a span panel or a lumen panel where you're doing, in some cases, main service panel upgrades. And still, when the grid goes down, you're not managing those loads. You're locking out loads, you're shutting off loads, but it's not like you're turning them off and then automatically turning them back on based on how much battery capacity is available, how much power is available. And that is literally what this device is doing. And that creates a much, much better homeowner experience.
Yeah, a lot better.
The other thing that I have to point out is that, and we've seen this with our own system without load management, is that, look, if the grid goes down and the system wasn't designed properly with load management, if you buy 2 Tesla Powerwalls or 2 Encharge batteries, it doesn't matter. If more load in the house is consumed than the battery can back up, the entire house is going to lose power, and that is a terrible, terrible customer experience, as you know, for homeowners who just spend $20,000, $30,000+ on a backup power system. That is the last call that you want to get, especially when you may also be out of power at that time, except you won't be because you'll have a power cell with a power manager.
Yep. No, this is like the good time guarantee for your customer. It's going to prevent any chance of there being a brownout where home loads overwhelm the system. It's going to make sure that they can flip on practically any load in the home that the system has power capacity for. It's just going to make sure that they don't turn on too many things at once and again overwhelm that system. So yeah, a massive boost in user experience.
Absolutely. I think as Jeremy said, this is the MSRP on this device is $1,000. So not only are we going to be thousands of dollars less than some of the other hardware out there, but it installs in about 2 hours. If you're curious, you're just extending circuits from the panel through these relays and then back into their breaker. And the programming is quite simple too. We have videos on the commissioning of this device and install of this device already on our Clean Energy YouTube page, which I highly recommend you check out. From a differentiation perspective, I'm going to repeat a couple of things that I've already said, but in a single enclosure, you're getting up to 18 usable kilowatt hours. What we found, honestly, is like we're sort of in that sweet spot for a lot of contractors who were previously or are doing Tesla Powerwall 2s, where one Powerwall was okay capacity, but not quite enough power to back up what the homeowner wanted. But 2 Powerwalls was a lot more money, but could actually back up what the homeowner wanted. We find ourselves in the sweet spot of power and capacity and price in that circumstance. I'd also point out that you're pretty much looking at 2 of any of our competitors' options relative to one of ours in this, because we're getting that 18 kilowatt hours with a 9 kW max continuous. And then you combine that with load management, and we drive a much better homeowner experience, frankly, a better contractor experience, where you'll be able to set expectations for the homeowner. There's no more homeowners staring over the installer's shoulder saying, add this one and that one and the other one. This is frankly going to allow us to back up more of the house with less energy storage, as Jeremy had said. Jeremy also mentioned the ability for us to load follow from our PV links. We're going to have this same challenge when we're AC coupled, and this is part of why we recommend DC coupling for new PV installs, is the fact that our optimizers know what are what our inverter needs and how much power the house is consuming in an outage. So they will literally load follow, which means if it's bright and sunny like it is today in Portland, Maine, if the grid went down right now and my house was consuming 2 kW, my optimizers would make as much power as they needed to supply 2 kW to my house, not more, not less.
And the battery wouldn't budge. You wouldn't lose a drop of energy in the battery there.
That's exactly right. You can island, I've done this at my own home. You can island the entire day. As long as your house isn't consuming more than the solar is producing, you can island the entire day without discharging your battery, which is important because if the outage extends through the evening, you risk going into the evening with a battery that's not fully charged because it was turning on and off the PV inverter all day long. All that being said, we are going to talk about how excited we are to launch the ability to AC couple with PowerCell. But this is functionality that frankly we've had with this platform for since ever, but at least for the 5 years that I've been selling it. So just to bring that all together one last time, the thing I want to emphasize here is this platform is going to provide a better backup power experience for the homeowner. If you took one of my competitors' battery systems, the exact same capacity and PV array size, I would bet you that this platform is going to last longer because we're going to operate more efficiently. We're going to back up the house from the sun. We're going to automatically manage loads in the house so that we don't risk shutting off the power while the grid is down. We're going to back up more of the house because we've got more power output, more peak power, and we're going to provide control. We're going to prevent the system overload. We're going to extend the battery life. We're going to allow homeowners to manipulate loads as they see fit. I should also mention that as someone with kids, you can use this. You can use the PowerView app to turn loads on and off while you're grid tied as well. And so if you really don't want your kids watching the TV in the basement, you just shut off the entire basement circuit. Maybe I should do it right now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, teach them a lesson.
Jeremy, take it away with upcoming product launches.
Yeah, right on. So after all that, extolling the benefits of DC coupled power, one of the most requested features in our history has been for AC coupling. And the reasons why have changed over time. Oftentimes our competitors haven't kept up consistent supply, installers will look for alternatives. Nowadays, it's more like competitors aren't offering enough. People want to have the most powerful battery, the largest battery, and that's still us. We still have the 9 kilowatt, 18 kilowatt hour battery, and people want to stick it on systems that they installed years ago, right? So most anyone on the call today is going to have, a Rolodex, a contact book, whatever, full of folks who, are looking at, grid instability, rising costs, increasing natural disasters, you name it. They have solar on the roof already. They found out a while back that that doesn't help them when the grid goes down, and now they're looking for a solution. So you can give them now a Generac solution. You can PowerCell AC coupled to their array and give them most, not all, but most of the benefits that you get with PowerCell, right? You can't turn that into a DC coupled system magically, but you can give them all the power, all the capacity, and load management. You can give them the load management experience that you with Power Manager that you get with PowerCell. So that's awesome. Probably the second biggest feature, and this is coming from those integrators who have done the 2 million resi generator installs in this country. They've been looking for generator integration, and they're not the only ones. We have a lot of solar integrators too who want to build the most bomber, ready for anything home backup system. And so in the same firmware update that's coming out now, mid-August, August 10th, we're going to be allowing the generators to be integrated with the system for recharging, for extended power capacity. One caveat here is you can't do AC coupling and generator integration at the same time, but that would be a pretty wild system.
Yeah, part of the reason I'm in the office today is because they're integrating the 22 kW generator at my house with my PowerCell system.
Jeff got kicked out. And then two more really exciting products. Power generator also dropping in August. This is totally unique. We'll talk about this later, just so you have some pictures to see it. And of course, Power Micro, which is us stepping outside of backup power a little bit and into the into the mainstream rooftop PV world. So let's get into it. All right. So first up, AC coupling. This is a brand new option for any installer who's interested in reservicing their existing customers, right? People who have really any type of solar array on their roof, as long as it's less than 7.6 kilowatts, can benefit from an AC coupled power cell battery. They can get the backup power that they're looking for, and oftentimes they can actually use it for self-consumption to reduce their overall, reliance on the grid even further. So here's a line diagram of how it looks. It's going to involve both the power cell battery in its 18 kilowatt hour configuration, as well as our 7.6 kilowatt islanding inverter or power cell inverter, and an ATS as well, one of our automatic transfer switches. That's important because that's what's going to now break the connection to the grid and keep all that good solar power, whether produced in real time or, that's been stored in the battery, using for later. It's going to keep all that solar power on site in the home and not going down the line and causing a danger for some poor line worker during that outage. So yeah, Generac AC coupling.
We definitely recommend, this is going to be compatible with the Power Manager, and we definitely recommend from a bill of materials perspective, inverter, battery cabinet with 6 battery modules, a 200 amp ATS, and the Power Manager. Because the Power Manager is compatible, just put it in on every single proposal, every single job. I've looked at pricing for this platform using the ATS, inverter, battery cabinet, modules, and the Power Manager, and we're still extremely competitive with the rest of our competition. And I have heard contractors say, "Oh, you got 3 boxes," and I'm saying, well, if you're doing end phase, and you're comparing with the same power output and capacity, you still have 3 boxes. You still have 3 boxes. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and the convenience again can't be overstated. So let's take some use cases here. So one of the best things that we're most excited about, right, is going back to our existing fleet of Generac generator owners and letting them know that their generator is basically now solar and battery storage ready. We're really thrilled about that. What's probably more relevant to this crowd though is the exact opposite, right? Going to the, all of the power cell installations that you have in your fleet and telling those folks, maybe they've gone through one too many, multi-day outages in the last couple of years, and they're ready to take the kind of the next step in load protection. So anyway, getting a generator integrated in that case is how you're going to do that.
Yeah, you can bet we're going to go back to as many homeowners as far as existing customers as possible and say, hey, we know you've loved your Generac experience with our home standby generator. We've gotten you through this storm and that storm, but also did you know that our certified clean energy partners can save you tens of thousands of dollars by installing solar? And if you're interested in using your generator as backup, you can actually power your house from solar and energy storage and use the generator truly as backup to renewable energy.
Yeah, the generator does a couple things. Not only does it keep the battery charged no matter what, even if the sun doesn't rise the next day or you drain that battery overnight, but it allows you also pick up larger loads than you'd be able to with the battery alone. And depending on how you configure it, you can have the generator run until the grid comes back on, or it can shut off as soon as the battery's topped off. So you got a lot of flexibility here in how you design this. Important to note that we're comparing 2 different types of generator integration here. And we haven't gotten to the power generator slide yet, but this will make sense, or more sense, in just a moment, I think. Power generator is a first of its kind, there it is, look at that. A first of its kind product, a DC generator. Generators, as a rule, they produce alternating current because they produce power from an alternator. We rectify that into DC power for direct charging of the battery. So a lot of the same benefits that you get from our DC coupled solar and battery arrangement, you get from the DC coupled generator and battery arrangement, where that battery gets charged up super fast. It's a 9 kilowatt generator. We have an 18 kilowatt hour battery. It's about 2 hours, bottom to top, for recharging that unit. And then the power gen shuts off and you're back to silent, clean, green battery power.
I think the right way of thinking about it is that the power generator is a DC purpose-built DC generator that is really used just for recharging the battery for long duration outages, right? Whereas AC coupled generator integration is, the benefit there is it's going to be less efficient. You're going to have a louder AC generator, but it will allow you to power really the rest of the home, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we're all pretty familiar at this point with the, sort of all the different flavors of hybrid vehicle that are on the road. Some of them have a little tiny motor, and it's just there to recharge the battery so that you can, cruise around using, silent, instantaneous electric power all the time. And that's kind of like this configuration where you have, a smaller generator. It's just there to keep the battery topped off at times when solar can. And it does that job super well, really quiet. We've done a lot to keep this thing as quiet and efficient as possible. We've got generator, long time generator guys calling in, asking if are you certain about that fuel consumption spec that you have there?
No, that's fine.
Yeah, we put a special electronic fuel injection system on this that is, different and better than the standard, carburetor or air mixer that we use on most of our resi home standby units. And as well as custom exhaust. It's not louder, it's quieter. So this is a great unit for those folks who are like, die hard about being as clean and green as possible, but also they really want to have that long-term outage protection as well. Power Micro, potentially the biggest thing that we're doing outside of Power Manager. No, this is definitely the biggest thing we're doing. This is the first time that we're really getting away from our core DNA of being a backup company, right? When people think backup power, they think Generac. PowerCell is an extension of that, right? It's a whole home system that really, if you look at the way it stacks up against the competition, it's really backup oriented, right? Big battery power,
Absolutely.
big capacity. This is the first time we're stepping away from that and making a product that really addresses the needs of really like the 70% of installations and installers who don't even mess with batteries yet. Batteries are the fastest growing product category in the residential clean energy space, but still about 70% of the installations that go on roofs in America don't involve a battery whatsoever. It's just people who want to reduce their energy liability. They want to produce clean power, and they want to pay less every month on their power bill. And Power Micro, I can say with complete certainty, is the most cost-effective way to do that. And we do this a number of different ways. So for one thing, probably the biggest differentiator between us and say the leading brand of microinverter in the market is that this is a 2-to-1 microinverter. It's not a module level power electronic. This is a micro that's going to control 2 panels at once. So all of the costs that we put into, say, the nice aluminum enclosure, all the board components, all the cables, that gets divided across 2 panels. So now your cost per watt, at least as far as power electronics is concerned, is halved. It's brilliant. We also made our home run cables a lot beefier, so you can actually install more solar per home run with this product. Again, cost savings and saving time on the roof. Finally, the fast and flexible bit. We maintain that when you put fewer components on the roof, you're going to spend less time up there doing it. You're going to have fewer, less labor cost, and fewer points of failure overall. We didn't go, quite as hard with this as we did with the PV Link, right, where you have, say, like 1 power electronic device per, 5 or 8 modules. This is just per every 2, so it's a pretty happy medium between the module level power electronic and the, substring optimization.
Yeah, I'll say from an operations perspective too. I mean, we've got limited supply of the Chilica micros. We acquired Chilica Power. We're rebranding and beefing up that product, getting it ready for scale. But from the contractors that have transitioned from Enphase to Chilican that we work with on a daily basis, we've seen, and from other microinverter products as well, like they'll vouch for the fact that from operationally, this is not going to slow them down. This should be installed just as fast or faster because you're installing half as many of them. You're not making up ends in the field. We've got prefabbed cables, so on and so forth. I think the biggest thing about this product is that from what we've seen and what we're anticipating, it is going to literally cost less and produce more with today's PV modules, where you're putting 400, 420 watt modules, 400, 420 watt mods on microinverters today. We expect folks are going to be able to quite literally produce more energy with these devices from the micros that they are actually using today, and it should save them money as well.
I gotta get you my clipping slide for this. We don't have it here, but take a look at the column on the far right here under the 240 volts. It's notable that these are configurable between 208 and 240 volt AC, and our continuous power rating there at the top, 720 watts. is absolutely massive. I mean, you compare that even to, you know, 2 IQ8s from Enphase, we still blow that away. You know, I think Enphase has done a really great job of, you know, telling a story about the benefits of clipping, about, you know, having a certain DC to AC oversized ratio. Frankly, I don't really believe myself that that the power ratings that they have put into their products have kept up with the rate of change in the module world. Modules are getting more powerful faster. You know, it seems like every single year, you know, it's like up, you know, 20, 30 watts, right? And what you're going to be able to do here is, you know, broaden the shoulders on your power curves massively, and not only broaden the shoulders like you would if you were, you know, kind of focused on that DC to AC ratio clipping. You're going to be able to extend the height of it too, really get more energy out of your system over the lifetime. And if you make a straight line comparison between, you know, us and the leading brand, you might be seeing megawatt hours of difference in terms of lifetime power production, just because you have, you know, say 60, 80 extra watts of power throughput capacity and loss that you're trimming out of the system every single day.
Yeah, unless you move to a much larger microinverter, which we've seen just from our experience with contractors today, we get a lot of contractors who are still putting 360s, 380s, 400 watt panels on IQ8 Plus as an example. Understanding that you can move up to an IQ8A, and in that example, you're outputting almost as much power, but you're going to spend a lot more money on the micro.
Yep. So we're not going to get into too much about how power micro goes together, but I think one of the biggest things that folks who are coming from, say, Enphase or other module level power electronic systems have to kind of wrap their heads around is that the building block of this system is a 2-to-1 microinverter, which means that, you know, you kind of have to think in base 2. You have to think in panel pairs. We do, of course, give you the flexibility to design modular systems that have odd numbers of modules. That's what we're showing here. Is we have 2 models of power micro. We have a single module microinverter that we're seeing on that in the end, and then of course the dual module microinverter. That's where all the cost savings come from. It's from this dual module unit. So a ton of design flexibility, just wrapping your head around the way that you connect 2 modules to 1 micro, bolt that to the rail, do the cable management. That's by far the biggest, you know, learning curve that installers have to kind of get accustomed to. After that, though, it's all gravy. Faster installations, lower costs, and overall I think a much simpler and more satisfying installer experience.
Yeah, I think what we want to emphasize here is the vast majority of your installs are going to have the 2-to-1 micros. We have a 1-to-1 to account for odd module installation. So if you have 21 panels, you'll have 10 of the 2-to-1s and 1 of the 1-to-1s. If you have 22 panels with 11 panels on the south and 11 panels on the east, you might have 10 2-to-1s or 9 2-to-1s and a few 1-to-1s. But in either case, be aware that the vast majority of these installs are going to be leveraging the 2-to-1 micro. Thank you, Jeremy. From a next steps perspective, I'd ask that you, GreenTech's going to be doing a follow-up in this webinar, so absolutely please reach out to them. For myself, you can reach out to me directly. My name is Jeff McAndrew again. I'm Director of Sales for the East. My counterpart, Kelly Berg on the West, and Thomas Nelson in the Southwest. If you want to keep it easy and email me directly, I'd be happy to pass your contact information along to the other directors. They'll make sure that your contact information gets down to their team. And then from there, we would want to have another introduction presentation with the rest of your leadership team, make sure that you're on board with becoming a partner with Generac, and then we can schedule certification training, sales training. We'll review your first 1 lines to make sure that your team is putting these jobs together, bills of material that you'll get through GreenTech, and then, you know, if feasible, and we have enough notice, we like to try and be present at as many first installs as possible. So please reach out to me, and I'll make sure that you get to the right place. Through the end of the year, I believe, we're going to continue offering the $1,000 cash back on your first install. All you have to do is go to generac.com/powercell/welcome offer. And after you register your first unit, Generac will literally write you a check for $1,000 just as a reward for giving us a shot. We absolutely appreciate the business. For those of you who are on the call, who are already working with us, we're going to continue to do our best to give you a great product and continue to support you as well as we can. Now we would love to open it up for questions. I'm going to see if I can expand this screen here so that I can actually see these. Give me just 1 second.
You got it?
I'm just trying to drag it up here. Sorry about that, everybody. I'm being,
Jeff, one question to tee it up for you. There was a lot of interest in the battery chemistry. Can you speak to that?
The battery chemistry today is NMC. It's lithium ion cobalt. For next gen product, we are definitely looking at how we can have an LFP option. But for today, our supply chain and product are all NMC.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Another interesting question. Sorry, Jeremy.
We're seeing a lot of activity around LFP, interest in that technology.
Here we go.
I think NMC is still one of the best chemistries you can get for its economy and energy density. By weight, you don't have to have an absolutely massive battery installation in order to get your 18 or 20 kilowatt hours. We get to pack a pretty massive amount of energy into a pretty small space, and we've proven pretty outstanding performance, and I mean an incredible. I know there's a lot of sort of FUD about safety around NMC out there. We've had an incredible track record for safety with the battery.
We haven't had a single safety incident. We've fielded, I don't even want to give a number, but like tens and tens and tens of thousands, probably actually by now well over 100,000 of these battery modules without an incident. Also, we have different versions of the battery packs, and we've been able to pass all of the safety certifications that we've needed with various models. So at least from our perspective, it's NMC has been a good product. But that being said, we do see demand for LFP, and so next gen product, we're going to see how we could possibly make that available. I do see the questions now, and I'm going to roll through some of them. One of them is a comment which I want to point out, and that's that Jeremy's stash is amazing. So thank you. Thanks for that comment. It's a question from the same person. Is the battery AC coupled? We did cover that in the presentation. What's the max ISC of the new snaps? So the rating is 15 amps, which means you can put a panel up to 12 amps ISC on the RS802. And we had the same question from another person as well. Operating temperature of the battery modules today, we highly recommend that you keep the batteries in a conditioned space. They'll charge above 41 degrees Fahrenheit. We perform really well at the high end of that range, and we'll continue to discharge down to, I believe, 14 degrees Fahrenheit. But still, even though we have an outdoor rated enclosure, we still recommend keeping the batteries in a conditioned space.
Yeah, you want to be thoughtful about how cold those batteries are going to be, at the times when you're relying on them. And so, if you're in Vermont, for the Colorado mountains, make sure that it's gonna stay within that operating range, overnight, in the winter, that sort of thing.
We got a question about car chargers, which I really can't speak to yet. This is something that the company's been looking at for some time, but I do expect that if we were to launch any sort of car charger, it's not going to be like a DC fast charger directly from the inverter. It would likely be a more standard universal car charger. Questions about battery chemistry, which we've covered.
It's a really healthy slew of questions here.
Yeah, excellent. I'm glad I cleared my schedule. What successes have been seen by renting the battery system versus sale or finance? I think that's a question around, renting the battery systems, like, I'm not sure I can think of an example of that. Unless you're asking more like TPO, like Sonova, PPAs and whatnot. I would say we have partners who leverage PPAs in certain markets. It makes a lot of sense, and they love those programs. We have contractors who sell through Sonova, absolutely love working with Sonova and their financing product. And And then I think honestly, from what I've seen, it's kind of market dependent. Like we've got contractors in Massachusetts who do really, really well with PPAs in the battery, or with Sonova financing on the battery in Massachusetts. And then in other markets, it's almost 100% financed through standard clean financing companies. How does the islanding mode know if it's a grid outage or a fire department shutdown? So if you were to do like a rapid shutdown, it's actually going to shut down all of the DC. Like if you if the utility comes and they pull the AC disconnect, you're right that the system would island because it's not going to see the grid, but there is specifically, because we're a DC coupled system, we have rapid shutdown for DC.
I think this confusion comes from probably working with, traditional grid tied, grid following inverters, right?
Yeah.
And you're familiar with the way that those work in a safety scenario is you pull AC and they drop, right? Because part of their certification process is that's what they do, right? When the grid drops, they drop. And so it's funny, our power cell inverter does something a little bit different. When the grid drops, instead of discontinuing service to the home, it severs its connection to the grid. And our certification with UL is basically contingent on proving that we can do that. That when the grid drops, we stop trying to push power to it.
We're going to completely isolate.
Yeah. And our AC coupling scheme that we have with third-party solar arrays takes advantage of that other mode of control, right? Where when the grid drops, that solar array goes down. We take advantage of that and use it as a control mechanism to avoid overcharging the battery. So when we want to shut that array down, when the battery's topped off, we're ready to stop producing solar power. We simulate a grid outage for just a moment to shut that PV array down, and then allow it to come back on later when the battery has discharged a bit and can accept more power.
Awesome, thanks, Jeremy. If the HVAC system is a heat pump, no soft starter is needed, correct? It's going to depend on I can't blanket state that you're going to be able to install with any heat pump and not need a soft starter. I would follow the specs. Unfortunately, I have to say that, but as long as we're trying to start less than a 50 amp surge and we're not powering more than 9 kW continuous, then we're not going to have to manage that load. But remember that with our system, if the heat pump turns on and we can't power it at that time, we're not shutting the whole house down. If you have load management installed, we're just going to manage that and the other large loads, and then we'll bring them back on one at a time. I'm sorry that I missed this. This question on going back to the slide for the comparison with other energy storage systems, but you are going to have access to this presentation following. And if you email me directly at jeffrey.mcandrew@generac.com, then I can share that comparison with you. We're basically just taking the specs from our system and our competitors and putting them on one slide. Multiple inverter systems, do they work well? Great question. So we got a lot of systems out there with multi-inverter. In fact, I think when as Pika, before we were like a really mainstream with just rooftop resi solar, we had a lot of multi-inverter systems. It was probably like, I don't know, close to 30–40% of our sales. I would say our system's gonna work really well if you have up to 2 or 3 inverters. Absolutely, you can install from a technical perspective, you could install, up to there are 12 PLM channels in the inverter. So you could install like 10, 11 inverters on a system. Would I personally recommend it? Probably not. I think there are other products that are better suited for that application. If you get a home that needs 20 kW, absolutely use 2 inverters. We see that all day. 30 kW, 3 inverters. We see it all the time. I would just want to make sure that we're connected with your team to make sure they know how to commission those systems, because that is going to be a different process. Having to change the communication channels of the PV links and the batteries, it only takes a second to do it right the first time, but it can take more time to untangle. So that's really it. There's a question, Generac bought Chilicon. Yes, we did. And that is the microinverter that, like I said, we're rebranding and relaunching with some new components, new firmware, new software, new
hardware. Nice enclosure, beautiful new app. Nice installer interface on the internet for registration, but under the hood, a lot of similarities for sure.
Yep. Can we talk a bit about how to become a Generac dealer installer? We have, to be totally honest, the process of becoming an installer The most black and white way of answering that is by going to our service training center and getting through certification training, which for PowerCell is a modular LMS-based training that takes about 8 hours from start to finish. So if you get, 4 hours of rain, 2 days back to back, you can complete it in 2 days. If you have one really rainy day, you could get it done in 1 day.
And also, I mean, just for having participated in this webinar, you're going to get an email. It's going to have
Absolutely.
instructions. As long as you just, pick up the phone after you fill the form, you're going to get a step-by-step spoon-fed process to becoming an installer. It's going to include that training. It's going to include the $1,000 rebate on your first install. It's going to be the whole package. So just watch your inbox, click the button, and that'll get you on your way.
Oh, you're going to get an email after this webinar. You're in the system now. You're going to find 10 ways to become certified after this webinar. When are the power generators shipping? That's a loaded question. I'm just teasing. My understanding is that they're supposed to start shipping in August. That we've got beta installs going on like pretty much throughout the course of the summer, and so as long as nothing changes there, the first batch is supposed to start shipping in August. I'm not sure.
That hasn't changed.
I'd plan on like mid to late August for power generators. Any plans to have a 10 kW inverter? Not on our existing platform, but a lot of our engineering effort now that we're in the process of launching AC coupling and gen integration is frankly focused on next gen platform, and that is going to have a larger grid tied inverter than 7.6. It's going to be, I believe it's going to be over 10 kW actually, and you'll learn much more about that when we're closer to launching that product. Lead times for inverters and batteries, most of the CED green techs around the country have stock of PowerCell, and if they don't, they can get it very quickly because other PCs have stock or we have stock in California. So whether or not green tech has stock in a specific location, we can get them stock very quickly. Lead times are just a few weeks. Awesome. I love this. We love your product and really, really want to see a non-NMC chemistry offering. And we hear that a lot from our contractors. And that's why I said next gen, we're absolutely going to look at other battery chemistries. Does it work well with third-party batteries? No, it doesn't work at all with third-party batteries. If you're going to use the PowerCell inverter, you're going to use the PowerCell battery cabinet. Like Jeremy said, they were built to work together. You're not going to use you're not going to use some third-party deep cycle battery with our stuff. And basically, like our BMU, our battery management unit, is designed to work with our battery packs in our enclosure at a very specific voltage levels. The BMS in our battery packs themselves are designed to work with those cells. Like the system end to end is talking and was designed to talk really only to those components.
I will caveat that though. I will caveat this, which is that we bought Chilicon.
Yeah.
We're moving into the rooftop, PV only realm, and it hurts me to say it, I think, but if you really wanted to, you could take Power Micros or the Chilicon microinverters, and you could attach that to roughly any AC coupled battery that you wanted to. So that is one way that if you were really dead set on using a competitor's storage product, but you really wanted to have Generac in the mix,
use the micros.
You use the micros. You could do that.
I don't want to hear about it, but use the micros.
Don't tell us.
I don't want to know.
But you could.
Here's a good comment. I have 2 batteries in an installation. Will Generac allow both batteries to discharge to allow complete home backup? I would want more context. Send me an email. I'd want more context. Like we've got a lot of systems out there that have 2 battery cabinets on a single inverter, and they will discharge together to back up the house. Absolutely. I got a Generac 11K generator, 30 panels microinverter system with your battery system. Can go off grid totally. There's a lot to unpack there. Frankly, there's a lot to unpack there. I would say send me an email. Generally, we don't advertise off grid, and honestly, it's because 99% of the market is grid tied, and we can service literally support from a tech support standpoint and sales app standpoint, like 30 grid tied solar plus storage systems before we can support one off grid system. So even if I said yes to that question, I wouldn't recommend it. It's just not it slows down our core business, which is grid tied resi solar plus storage. But I think it's a great question.
It's kind of like the threshold for service, for testing, for reliability, just, go through, it's kind of like the difference between like device and medical device, and the cost difference is enormous as well. So we don't advertise as off-grid. We're aware of people who use our system as an off-grid system, as a primary power system.
Yeah.
But it's not exactly how we market it. That said, it sounds like you got a lot of the right parts.
It sounds like you've got some resiliency over there.
Yeah, plenty of equipment
yeah.
to work with.
There's an ask for clarification. The concern is that the rapid shutdown is initiated by first responders, usually due to a fire. Could you further clarify how the system reacts to utility loss of power versus firefighters wanting the entire structure power free for their safety? To be totally clear.
And let's just make sure we're talking about PowerCell here, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
with PowerCell, you'll have an AC disconnect on the side of the house. You will also have a DC disconnect. Either you are leveraging the inverter as that means of disconnect, or you are running a separate external DC disconnect to shut off power to all the batteries and PV links so that no power is flowing whatsoever.
Yeah.
There's a couple ways you can accomplish rapid shutdown, but to be clear, all of the equipment should be labeled AC solar disconnect, DC solar disconnect, and if you're using a PowerCell system with a battery, then you absolutely should be showing PV rapid shutdown disconnect and battery disconnect.
Yeah. So I guess just, bottom line is we are certified UL 1741. We are compliant with NEC 2017, 2020.
Yeah.
Those two things in combination mean that, we are an anti-islanding system, that we're not going to send power back to the grid during a grid excursion, and that we are also compliant with, the intermodule voltage requirements after a rapid shutdown command is given. We can't expect firefighters to keep up on all the technology and the sort of differences between various systems in the market. All the ambiguity that you're kind of alluding to here should be cleared up with the big red plaque, right? PV rapid shutdown initiator here, and it might be a breaker, it might be a big red button, it might be a big DC disconnect. Whatever it is, we've got a couple different ways to satisfy it depending on jurisdiction and system configuration and other requirements.
Yep. Yeah, we have another technical code related question here. Using local interconnect lingo, is the system considered an isolated power system or parallel? And again, to be clear, this stuff is cleared up with UL 1741. We can operate in parallel with the utility, but when we lose utility power, we are required to be an isolated power source to the house, and UL 1741 dictates that, and we comply with UL 1741. So yes, we are a grid tied. We operate in parallel until there's a loss of utility power. At such time, we operate as an isolated power source. Great questions. You bet. Cool. Tom Bone, on your end, anything from the Green Tech folks before we wrap up?
We should just express our thanks to Jeff and Jeremy for hosting today. It's obvious that the Generac PowerCell solution has components that communicate almost as fluidly as you guys. So thank you for everything you walked through today.
Yeah, Tom, to you and the whole CD crew, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's been too long. So
it always is.
Got to do one of these, so appreciate you having us on.
Yeah, absolutely. We highly at Generac, we highly recommend working with Green Tech. We get a lot of contractors who work through Green Tech. They love that the ability to have job site delivery. I don't think we see a lot of folks really appreciate the service that they're getting out of their Green Tech location. So thank you all for the partnership. Thank you everyone for joining, for sticking it out through these questions and through Jeremy's and my silly banter and his mustache, which I think is real.
Not fake, yeah.
All right, thank you everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the week. Take care.
Thank you everyone.